Mic'd up.
Three of the Rovner Pro on the Mic'd Up platform. I'm AJ Rovner, joined alongside Steve Shanamanico. After a 1 week hiatus, we are back, and the New York Rangers still right in the thick of things, actually holding on to the second wild card spot. They currently be the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. That's all you need to get in. A lot to cover since we were last on. But, Steve, any opening thoughts on your mind before we start to dive into the Rangers' most recent stretch?
Well, the consistency continues. A great game against Columbus, and they can't find the offense. The power play has left them since the 4-team tournament. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's hasn't been good, and they've lived and died by the special team for years, especially the power play. They got Fox back. Seems kind of stale to me. Very predictable, and they haven't been producing. Um, like to see Kreider on the first unit, put him in front of the net. That's where he's made a great career. Um, Other than that, looks like, they're playing every other day this week coming up, so I imagine Igor is going to be playing all those games. But yeah, no, inconsistency has been what we've been talked about all year. You know, it's coming through right till the end. It looks like.
Really, in the home stretch, 14 games to go. Rangers are 33, 29, and 6. They're fourth in the Metropolitan Division. They trail New Jersey by 8 points. It's as close of a wild card race that I think I've ever seen since they've went to this format. I mean, there are, let's see here, 6 teams divided by 4 points. Every team in the Eastern Conference at least has 60 points. It is really just going to be an absolute dogfight to the finish line. The most games a team has remaining is 16. So now let's dive into the Rangers' most recent stretch. It's been a while, so we'll really just recap, I guess, the last week and a half. But it hasn't been too solid for the Rangers. We covered the back-to-back shutouts. We covered Washington, I believe, so we'll go to Ottawa. Rangers have lost 5 of their last 7. A lot of these games were winnable, but they had an extremely important back end of that road trip, which leapfrogged them into playoff positioning. But once again, got destroyed by Columbus 7-3. A very difficult loss to Winnipeg. Certainly a game they should have won. And then back-to-back huge victories on the road, the Wild and Columbus, before coming home against Edmonton and falling. So, Steve, give me your thoughts on these games right here.
Yeah, I mean that Columbus game. That was, I believe, a dreadful third period, last 10 minute blow up against Ottawa, which not only did they give away a point on their, but they gave Ottawa 2 points. Probably shouldn't have gotten. Um, Columbus, they just laid a dud. Quick wasn't good. They fought back with the 2 shorthanded goals on the 1 penalty, got them tied up, and just a weak defensive game, a weak goaltending game. They haven't been a very good third-period team all year. They don't seem to be able to get that tying goal anymore. Last year, they were having great comebacks, late in game. And then, Winnipeg, they played really well against a top team. Thought a bad call against Rempe gets pushed backwards into the goalie. They call it. Winnipeg scores the power play goal. And that was the game winner, 2-1. Again, they put some pressure on in the third, going up against the best goalie in the world, Mika. I don't know if he fanned on an empty net with 30 seconds to go, or puck hopped over his stick, whatever it was. I mean, the net was wide open for him. Just maybe kind of the year it's been for the Rangers. Last year, he bangs it in, they tie it up, maybe win in overtime. Some tough losses there. Then they did come back and have some nice wins. Game against Columbus, 4-0 game. Trocheck scored, sealed it late in the third, and got the empty netter. Probably, their best overall game, if not all year, in a long stretch of 20 games. I've been liking what I've seen on the defense, and they're not giving up the crazy odd man rushes. They're not giving up A1 chances in front of the net. They're holding the opponents to shot total. Edmonton, I think 22 shots. I think he got 21 save shutout against Columbus. But it looks like they're sacrificing some offense as well because they're not getting shots on goal. They had 17 in the 3-2 overtime loss against Washington. You're not going to win too many games that way. They got the point out of it, but again, blew a third period. Didn't score a goal in the third period. Couldn't get the tying goal against Edmonton in the third after Edmonton 2-1. Power play was 0 for 3. So it's just, kind of the same old stuff. Play good 2, play okay for 2, play bad for 1. And here we are, talking about scratching and clawing, trying to get that what looks like now is going to be the last wild card spot because Ottawa's run off 6 in a row. So they distance themselves a little bit anyway for now.
Yeah, and it's worth noting as well that this is a really difficult stretch of games coming up as well. And also, Igor's getting work the most he has all year. It was the first time he's played full back to back. He did try and play a back to back on the 22nd, 23rd February, but was pulled early against Buffalo. This was the first time Igor played back to back 60 minutes. He's played 11 of the last 13, so it's really been Shesterkin's crease, and you would have to assume he's going to keep playing every game on this homestand: Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver, all every other day. And then maybe Quick's next start will be March 28th or 29th when they go to Anaheim or San Jose for that West Coast trip. It's a very difficult time for a West Coast trip, right in the last couple games of the year. It's weird to have a stretch like that, it feels like. But it's definitely some easier opponents on the road, to say the least.
Well,
What's your questions?
you brought up an upcoming schedule. Calgary's 2 points out of the wild card spot, so they're playing for their playoff lives. Toronto's playing for the top spot in the Eastern Conference, and they're never easy to play against. And they certainly have something to play for. And then Saturday they have Vancouver in the afternoon, and they're holding the last wild card spot with 2 teams right up their butt. So these teams aren't laying down just because the Rangers are looking to get 2 points.
And I think it's worth noting as well the teams that are laying down, the Rangers have had a lot of trouble with. I'll never forget the game against Chicago where we gave up, I think, like 17 shots at home. I think you were there, and we lost 2-1 against the Blackhawks that night. Now, just a lot of losses against pretty bad teams. Of course, Buffalo, they're the bottom feeders in the East. Gave up 8 goals to them on the road. A lot of points the Rangers have left on the table, though, just to name a few, against the 4 teams in the NHL. We'll answer your questions. We'll go over the next Rangers stretch. They're all at home. They're all against potential playoff teams. And then we will come right on back to the Rovner report.
Should we bench Kreider altogether and play the pickup from, I forget if it was the Predators or somewhere else, who was playing center on the third line when Kreider was out?
So we're talking about Yossinen on Colorado. Picked him up in a trade that sent Ryan Lindgren and Jimmy Vesey to the Avalanche. Lindgren, a longtime Rangers defenseman. Kreider still playing first unit power play minutes. It's a very difficult decision. It's a veteran guy who's been so good at the end of seasons and in the playoffs. I mean, you can make a serious argument that he's the most clutch Ranger of all time. He's got the most playoff goals. He's got the most power play goals for the Rangers in the playoffs. It's a very difficult decision. I personally don't see how you could scratch Kreider this late in the season. He was scratched for 1 game earlier this year against New Jersey. I believe the Rangers were shut out 4-0 or 5-0 in that game at the Prudential Center. I don't think you could scratch Kreider, but what's your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I'm thinking just the opposite. Not from what the caller called in. I think you want to give him some top quality time. Nothing against Brodzinski, Carrick, or whatever. Kreider may not be the type of guy at this stage in his career where he could, benefit with playing with guys like that. I don't even object to trying to put him on the first line, first power play unit. I'm not making excuses for the guy. He definitely is not as physical as he once was. He hasn't been winning the puck battles, but he still got leadership. He still could put the puck in the net. Had the huge shorthanded goal against Columbus at the time. It was huge on the 2-on-1 with Mika. He seems to work well with Mika, so I don't know what Laviolette's reluctance is to putting them together. But you down the stretch here. He's a veteran guy, and I think he still could bring something to the table. So I would definitely like to see him on the first power play unit. We've tried a few different options with that. Lafreniere hasn't worked out. He's a whole nother story. That guy. Um, frustrating as can be watching at such a young age seem to falter instead of flourishing like a lot of guys in their NHL career do. But Kreider's, I'm all on board. Kreider, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I'd love to see him get some more quality time down the stretch and see if he can contribute.
Yeah, we could just switch topics for a minute and just talk about Alexi Lafreniere and how poor he's been, a -14. It's been a really difficult stretch for Lafreniere. Pretty much all year since his contract signing. I know I'm a broken record, but nothing's really changed. It's been an extreme disappointment. Such promise. He's still so young, but I mean, he had 2 points in all of he had 2 points in February. Of course, there was a 2 week break with the Four Nations, but still, that's 2 points in 9 games. Average less than a point per game in February. He had 4 points in January, Steve. 4 points.
Yeah, he got the goal, opening goal in Columbus. When just it was a misplay behind the net. Mika threw it out in front, and he put it in on his backhand, and he almost missed that too because he wasn't going really that hard to the net. He doesn't seem to anticipate well for a guy that was a first round pick. Um, I don't know. Maybe his head's just not there. I wouldn't give up on the guy. He's a big guy. He's got talent. If he could score 30 goals and chip in 30 assists, I mean, that would be great at this point. Sad to say, but I learned not to expect too much from him. And it seems like every time he plays well or blocks a shot or throws a check, like the announcers are quick to point it out, like he's doing us all a favor. I mean, come on, man.
He's had 17 points in the calendar year of 2025. He had 21 before, and obviously that's a shorter part of the year, middle of October, November, December, and only 17 since the calendar year.
Yeah, Jesper Bratt's had 10 in his last 4 games.
You know that all too well, as both our fantasy seasons came to an end, and Bratt ended yours, even though mine's been in Cancun for a couple months. Continuing on with the questions.
Do we believe that the Devils might come down to earth now that Jack Hughes is out?
I think they've already came down to earth, to be completely honest. I know they won last night, but this team can't win. I don't even. There's been conversation that the Devils might play so bad they might fall out of the playoffs altogether. You got to realize that if you fall out of the Metropolitan top three, you're pretty much right in a dogfight to make a playoff spot. I mean, all these teams are so close. Devils obviously still have a lot of breathing room right now, but still a lot of time to go. A lot of these teams still have 36, 32 points on the table. A lot could change. So I can't see New Jersey getting out of the first round without him. What do you think?
Yeah, they won 2 big games against Columbus in the last week and a half. Jake Allen stole one yesterday, made 45 saves on 46 shots. Markstrom hasn't been great since coming back from his injury. And it, definitely not get. I mean, uses the offensive machine over there, but like I mentioned a few minutes ago, Bratz really picked it up for them. Helped them get a couple of big wins. But yeah, I don't think they're going to drop out of the playoffs, but I think they're going to have a tough time in their first round unless they get everyone going at the same time. Hamilton's out, another big loss offensively for them. So guys like Bratton, Heischer, Timo Meyer hasn't seemed to be the guy to step up the way they thought he would. I think he scored 40 on San Jose a few years back. Hasn't been nearly the player that they thought he'd be. But they need guys like that to really step up if they're going to make any kind of a headway without using the lineup. He runs the offense over there. Kills the Rangers, kills Igor.
And 2 more to go.
Do we think with the most difficult schedule I've seen them have in a long time, the Rangers are going to find a way to eke into the playoffs? What are the key games they need to win?
I think they've hung in it long enough to the point where you got to have faith. That's just my personal opinion. I know we've been doing this since December, believe it or not. And there have been some stretches where we've been like, this team needs to fold, but they win enough games. As Steve said, it's the most inconsistent hockey team I've ever watched. It's unbelievable. There's one night where you think they can make a run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's one night where you think, like, oh my goodness, how is this team fighting for a playoff spot? But here we are, and they're in one. And it's almost April. I mean, it's another stretch of games where you're going to have to prove it. So we'll see. But they've gone through some very difficult stretches of games where they've been able to win. Minnesota, at Columbus, taking care of them 4-0. Like, why couldn't you beat them at home? Losing 7-3. Just so much inconsistency. But I think there's no reason not to have faith. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Columbus. They lost 4 in a row. They seem to be on the downside while Ottawa got up. But, these streaks can happen, whether there's 10 games, 14 games left, whatever it might be. Yeah, they played a great game against Columbus. Holds a real good offense to 21 shots on goal. An offense that had 46 yesterday against the Devils, that are a pretty good team. And then, the game against Edmonton, they lose 3-1. It was an empty netter. So 2-1, let's say. They lost 3-2 to Washington and lost 2-1 to Winnipeg. 3 of the top teams in the league were 1-goal games for all intents and purposes. So they're in these games. And I hate to say it, but I don't think the schedule really makes a difference for the Rangers at this point, because when you expect them to maybe lay a dud, they play well. You expect them to have a halfway time against a team like San Jose or Anaheim. They may lose the game. So I don't look at the schedule that much, but any game, any point, 2 points, 1 point's going to mean a lot going down the stretch. And as I mentioned earlier, some of these teams they're playing against are in the same dogfight that they are, except in the other conference. So it's going to be good hockey, hopefully, and Rangers have to play much better, much more consistent, and get the power play going. And Igor's got to be consistent too. I didn't like that goal he gave up to Arvidsson for the game winner the other night. I mean, it's deflected off Jones's stick. It goes under the crossbar, blah, blah, blah. Shot comes from 35 feet out. You can't let it get past you.
And then the question from my pops is pretty much the same thing. Why is Kreider on the third line? Went over that from Andrew. So we'll answer another question from another host on this platform.
Michael Miller, Yankees Coast to Coast, also a Ranger fan. The Rangers have played with no sense of urgency all season. They are so easy to play against, it is unbelievable. They've taken on the personality of their coach, which is none, and Kreider and Mika have played with no sense of urgency all season. Panarin is not the type of player that is tough to play against, but Kreider's supposed to be, and he doesn't win any puck battles, and Mika is constantly reaching and not checking. They're in trouble.
I agree with certain points of that statement. I think that Laviolette, unless they win the cup, I think he's gone. I just doesn't seem like guys want to play for him. And Kreider looks disinterested at some points to me. I think that just he's been treated so poorly by Laviolette. I don't think Zach Jones likes the guy. I think there's a lot of guys on this team that don't like the guy. So I read a really interesting tweet that this is obviously the back end of this rebuild that the Rangers had, where bringing Panarin and all these guys to try and make runs, and they've made runs. And this was like a 2-year gap with Laviolette where you had like one more chance. And then the thought is to just move into another rebuild, if that makes sense. It was a very interesting article. Like, this was the last chance, bringing a guy that's won a cup, blah, 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 blah. So maybe this is probably it for this group. A lot of them have already left. Trouba, Lindgren, Hedel, Kako, guys from this rebuild that the Rangers have had for over half a decade that are already gone. You would expect some bigger names. And then the other thing that he said, I think Mika's actually been playing much better. His plus minus actually down to a minus 14, which sounds crazy, I know, but he was into almost a minus 30. I believe he has double-digit points over his last 9 games, so he's been better. But your thoughts on that?
Well, Amika's been a lot better since Miller's come to the team. I don't know whether it's the attitude or just giving a little bit more effort or just some luck with the puck. Maybe. I look around the league and when I see Panarin, he's a talented guy, and there's plenty of other teams and guys in the league that play similar style. Mitch Marner doesn't put guys through the boards. He doesn't dive and block shots. He was a little bit more conscientious, back checking than Panarin is. But there's a lot of guys around the league. The problem I see with the Rangers, and when you have a Panarin and a Mika who's not a physical player, now Kreider, who, whether it's a cranky back or his age or whatever it might be, the Rangers don't have enough guys to fill that gap in for guys that are strictly offensive, talented guys who don't go in the dirty area, so to speak. So I'm not picking on a Panarin guy. We watched him. He could be lazy on back checks. He's, as slow as a snail going off the ice for his, line change. But, there's other guys in the league. I don't see Sebastian Aho, being a defensive stalwart out there, and it go up and down. Every team's got a superstar that's similar to that. But the problem with the Rangers, I think, is the other guys, too many secondary guys that don't have that what it takes kind of attitude and desire to fill in for a Panarin or a Miko where they lack in the physicality. So we'll see what happens. You need guys like that. I mean, Panarin's on like an 8-point streak. He's helped them win some games here. I mentioned all year with Mika getting tons of quality ice time, play penalty killing. They kept them after the trade deadline. So the key guy to the team, whether you like him or not.
So now let's talk about this Rangers upcoming stretch. It's going to be, if we come back on Friday, maybe do a doubleheader this week, see how Stevie Boy's feeling, but we'll go over Saturday to make sure. Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver to wrap up this 4-game homestand, all against Canadian teams. So it'll be 4 straight games at the Garden where you'll hear both anthems if you were at Edmonton. Let's talk about the Flames. Rangers played them once this year. They lost 3-2 on November 21st. This is a Calgary team that is 30, 25, and 11. That's good for 71 points. They are currently 2 points out of a playoff spot with a game in hand on the Vancouver Canucks. Calgary points-wise is led by Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri. Mackenzie Weegar's one of the best defensemen in hockey. And then really after that, there's not much scoring going around. Goaltending-wise, Dustin Wolf is their guy, 22, 4, and 5 with a 262 goals against average, 912 save percentage. Pretty solid work there. Calgary's ice cold. They've lost 7 of their last 9. A game the Rangers should win tonight. Thoughts?
Yeah, that game that they played up in Alberta, that was a weird game. Calgary totally dominated shots on goal, dominated the play. Rangers were in the game of Igor. They came back and scored 2 goals in the second to tie it, and they lost gave up the go-ahead goal, I think, in the late second or early third, and weren't able to get the tying goal in that one. That almost started a stretch of games for Rangers where the inconsistency he really started coming out with, would give up, tons of quality chances against teams that are not great offensive. And as you just mentioned, Huberdeau leads the team with 50 points. He had a horrible last year. So that they have 171 goals scored. I think it might be tied for the lowest in the league for goals scored. Anyway, yeah, but they're 2 points behind Vancouver with a game in hand to make that final wild card spot. So they lost 3 in a row. It's not going to be an easy game. Rangers, match up pretty well against them, but we'll see what happens tonight.
And now let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's next, the third game of this 4-game homestand. The Rangers have played Toronto twice this year. That amazing start where they started 5-0-1. They were the 5th game on the schedule of the season where the Rangers beat them 4-1, as I just stated. And then they recently just played them on February 28th and lost by a score of 3-2. Toronto is 40-24-3. They're all but a lock to make the postseason. Real question is how deep they can go. It's a question we ask every year as NHL fans. 83 points for Toronto, good for third in the Atlantic. They have 12 points, 11 points on the Rangers right now of the second wild card spot, bearing one of the worst collapses in probably league history. They are good to go. However, another team that hasn't been very good. They've lost 5 of their last 7. They're, of course, led by the big 3 I like to call Marner, Nylander, Matthews. They all at least have 20 goals. They all at least have 33 assists. They all at least have 60 points. One of the best players of my generation, John Tavares, looks well on his way to another 30-goal season. Morgan Riley, another defenseman he's not having a good year, but always have to be careful for him. Matthew Knies has been really good. 24 goals, 20 assists, 44 points. Goaltending-wise, Joseph Woll, 23-12-0, 276, 905. Anthony Stolarz, 13-8-3, 239 goals against average, 918 save percentage. An explosive offensive team with really solid goaltending this year. It'll be a difficult game for New York.
Yeah, I was at the game. They lost 3-2 a couple of Friday nights ago. Played a real good game. They gave up an early power goal to Ekman Larson, but kind of held Toronto in check most of the game. I think they had low shot total, maybe 20 shots on goal that game. Another game where the Rangers gave up the go-ahead goal 6 minutes into the third, couldn't get the equalizer, put some pressure on power play late. Just, kind of same old stuff we've been talking about for a long time. You mentioned all their offensive prowess. Barris, year after year, it's easy to go under the radar with this team with Marner, Nylander, Matthews. But, man, Tavares put up numbers. Obvious stay out of the box against this power play and, going to have to play a real solid game like they did a couple of Friday nights.
And then, in case we aren't back on Friday, we'll talk about the Vancouver Canucks. First thing that comes to my mind is the return of Philip Hedl, longtime Ranger. You'd have to assume they'll have a nice tribute video ready for him. Was a big playoff guy for the Rangers for numerous seasons. Was ultimately dealt, but a beloved Ranger who just couldn't stay on the ice. He might be in the press box. Who knows if he even travels? Unfortunately, in concussion protocol, once again. You just have to think how many more, and then he just won't be able to play anymore. But the Rangers played these guys on November 19th. Chris Kreider scored the game-winning goal in that game with 9:17 to go in the third period, assisted by Riley Smith and Mika Zibanejad. So preaching to the choir of Mika and Kreider going back together on a line where they were for so many years. Trying to find now a little bit of info. Here we go. Here's some info on the Vancouver Canucks. Currently 31, 25, and 11, 73 points, fourth in the Pacific Division. Currently in the wild card race, they hold a third spot, as Steve said earlier, just like the Rangers. I believe with one game less played. To talk about them a little bit, they have arguably the top defenseman in hockey, maybe besides McCarr, obviously, but Quinn Hughes, 16 goals, 47 assists, 63 points. He leads their team in points by 21. He's a +9. He leads the team in plus-minus by 5. Brock Besser's their best offensive player. 18 goals, 20 assists. They actually, Steve, only have 7 guys with 10 or more goals. JT Miller trying to get some revenge on his old team. Kevin Lankinen's their goal. He's been really good this year. 23, 13, 7, 254 goals against average. Thatcher Demko, 6, 6, and 3. It's really been Lankinen's net all year. Vancouver, another team playing for their playoff lives, as are the Rangers. Back end of this 4-game Canadian homestand. Tell me a little bit about Vancouver.
Well, just looking at this team, it's shocking that they're even, let alone in the playoffs right now. Thatcher Demko started the season injured, been injured most of the year. As Lankin picked up the slack. He's been pretty consistent. He's done well for them. Quinn Hughes, unbelievable. Missed 14 games this year, and he still leads the team as a defenseman by 21 points. The guy's a phenom, 25 minutes a game. Just, keep your eye on him. He's Brian Leach-esque, dare I say that. The guy is just an unbelievable player. I've watched him play so many times, controls the game. Elias Peterson, second on the team in points, has had a horrific year I'll say by his standards. 42 points. He's a -12. Looking down up and down this team, I'm almost feel like I'm looking at the Rangers with some of these stats. Brock Besser a -26 with 38 points, and the team's in the second wild card spot. So they got rid of JT Miller. Outside of Hughes, probably was the best offensive player, and they're still hanging around somehow. So it'll be a good game afternoon. I think that's Sam Rosen tribute day Saturday. Yep. So that'll be nice for Sam at the Garden. 40 years doing this for us fans. He's been awesome. But game the Rangers should definitely win. But just keep your eye on Quinn. Guy's an unbelievable defenseman.
Yeah, just to talk about Hughes a little bit. 5 of his 6 NHL seasons that he's been up full time, he's been in the Norris Trophy voting. For those of you that don't know, that goes to the game's greatest defenseman for that specific season. He won it last year. This is a guy with 396 points in 418 games. He's a +38. He's been a positive in 4 straight years. Scores on the power play. His numbers are just flat out phenomenal. To be a +38 on a team that's only made the playoffs twice in his 6 straight seasons, his 6 complete seasons is very difficult to do. He was actually at -34 through his first 2 years and is now all the way up to a +38. So, he's a world-class player, only 25 years old. Who knows if the Americans do win the 4 Nations Cup, if he was able to ultimately go. He wanted to go with his brother Jack, but ultimately couldn't due to injury. Plays over 25 minutes a game. Any last thoughts before we head off the air on episode 43 of the Rovner Report?
Nope, I'm not not going to be foolish enough to make any predictions on this team going down the stretch. Just should be. All these games are playoff games for all the teams that they're playing also, so they should be really good games. I know one of the callers mentioned lack of intensity. They're Lavalette. Sometimes when they come through, they score a big goal. They show a lot of enthusiasm. Ryder's Mika, the shorthanded goal, jumping into each other's arms. Keandre jumping on the pile. I'm like, why do these guys? They don't look like they care when they're playing, but they obviously do care. So maybe some of this intensity comes out in these big games, and they could put together a good string here, be more consistent, and put together some 3 wins here this week, and get them in a much better spot to make the playoffs. And then playoff time comes, everyone knows anything could happen.
No doubt about that. I certainly hope the Rangers can at least take 2 of the final 3 and be able to scratch out at least 4 of 8 points on this 4-game homestand. AJ Rovner, Steve Shanamatico, episode 43 of the Rovner Report on the Mic'd Up platform. We'll see you either later this week or early next week. Thank you, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.